All right, thank you. So just continuing on with the introduction, so Birchal Financial Services will be the licensed intermediary for this offer. The information and discussion on this webinar is for informational purposes only. It is not personal financial advice. We have not considered your personal financial circumstances. So please do your own research and always consider the offer document and the general crowdsource funding risk warning before investing. More information is available over at our website at birchal.com. Now, how today's session is going to run, we're going to go through a presentation hearing about all of the awesome things about Vitramed and the progress that they've made so far. And we'll then switch into a Q&A session. So if you look at the bottom of your Zoom window, you'll see a little box down there that says Q&A. So if you would like to ask a question, you can do so through that box, and then I will then facilitate the discussion once we move into that section of the presentation. So as with my little late addition there, we are recording today's session. So if you do have to jump off before we get to the end of the presentation, we will send around a recording afterwards as well. So you won't miss out on any of the discussion that happens today. All right, let's get into the interesting stuff, why we're all here. Let's hear a little bit more about Vitramed.
Thank you so much for the great introduction, Kirsten. Really appreciate it. And hello to everyone online. So my name's Vishal Tilak. Everyone calls me Tilak. It's been since I was a kid. And to be honest, we don't know why. It just caught on as I was growing up. So thanks so much for awarding us the opportunity to discuss Vitramed and what we're trying to do in the Australia and New Zealand market, along with taking proudly Australian solutions and products to the rest of the world, specifically Africa, where I'm originally from. So who are we? The business was actually founded in 2008, and it was acquired quite recently, about 5 years ago, with basically my partner and myself, whereby we felt that we wanted to take the business onto the next level. The business focuses on medical device distribution. We supply accessories and consumables for the gastrointestinal and the endoscopy market. Now, many of you might not know this, but that's one of the most largest and focused areas in the ANZ region and globally due to colorectal cancer and a higher growth rate of GI diseases or gut health. And as recent as the last 6 months, there's been a lot of publications that focus around how gut health is linked to dementia and Alzheimer's. So it's one of the most unsexy medical fraternity, and I use that word lightly, but it's extremely popular. There is in excess of 100,000 procedures a year in Australia alone. So when the business was founded, its objective was to focus on the state or public hospitals. We have now diversified the business into focusing across a multitude of gastrointestinal and endoscopy products and consumables. And I'll dive into the fleet or the products offering and our portfolio later on. In terms of our company highlights, key areas that we'd like to focus on. Over the past 3 years, we've had revenue growth of 36% year on year. One of the key milestones for me in the past 12 months has been we've got all our hemodialysis or renal products approved by B. Braun in Australia and New Zealand. They went through their rigorous patient clinical trials, and they've now approved the use of our solutions in their clinics. And they've actually partnered with us across 3 state tenders and 1 tender in New Zealand as well. We've seen significant growth in customer base. We've had in excess of 200 plus clients that have actually purchased with us and been active with us over the past 2 years. And one of the key partnerships that is enabling us for the growth into the next phase is we've got a strategic partnership with EBOS Healthcare. So they are the largest medical and consumable device company in ANZ. Global revenue in excess of $13.5 billion. They've got in excess of 10,000 clients and have over 100,000 SKUs. So what we've done with them is that we've positioned it whereby we have access now to all of their customers via their 3PL. And then B. Braun Renal allows us to actually have them be the primary customer and gives us access to in excess of 3,000 patients in the Australia and New Zealand market. And lastly, our key focus area has been around international expansion. We've got the products registered in South Africa with the relevant health authorities, so the TGA equivalent body. And in Africa, the rest of the countries utilize South Africa as the case study. If we've got all the products approved and registered there, it's easy for expansion throughout the continent. So we've already identified 10 countries where the samples have been approved, have been accepted by the head of medical, the clinical team, and the doctors. So the past 24 months has been extremely exciting for the business because we've had a lot of go-to action in parallel while we're taking care of our day-to-day business. In terms of industry challenges, this is one of the key reasons why I've been focusing on expanding our product offering and focusing on touching all of our customers in the ANZ region. So endoscopy and the GI market globally and locally face several ongoing challenges. But one of the core challenges that feeds into the rest is costing and funding. The rise of consumable prices globally is averaging 12% year-on-year increase. Now, if Medicare rebates are not increasing in the same proportion, there'll always be a negative deficit whereby obviously it's either paid out of pocket from us, the patient, so the consumer, or hospitals in some cases try to absorb it as part of the entire procedure. And one of the key issues is the private and public gap. In the public hospitals, you face long wait times, quite a lengthy period, whereas in the private facility, you can be serviced much more quicker. However, it comes at an exorbitant cost. So this is causing a lot of strain in the entire market, and it's forcing a lot of the privates and the public institutions now to try and find more affordable quality solutions without compromising patient quality. In terms of annual increases, 12%, as I mentioned, we've also got 4 times the cost of disposable versus your normal capital equipment, but there's insufficient capital to actually be outlaid from these particular private hospitals and day hospitals. And 57% of hospitals are using single-use scopes just based on pricing. But again, that comes with a higher risk of infection as well. In terms of the solution, our solution is very simple. We partner with leading manufacturers who bring basic cutting-edge tools and products to our clinicians that allow us to be fast to market, reliable in terms of quality of care for our customer, and it's affordable. And we get support step by step through the entire process. Our partners have also allowed us to work with the R&D team to look at customizing certain solutions that speaks to our particular market or the demand from our GIs. The advantage is that in Australia, our doctors are pretty advanced in terms of radical improvement, new innovations. So if they've got an innovative process or procedure, they always try and find complementary tools or solutions or products that can fit into that particular process. And I'll explain that further when we talk about the product portfolio again. So we've seen great success in terms of increasing our position in terms of affordable and the diverse medical consumables. In terms of market size, what I've done is I've basically put together 2 sides that show the global GI and endoscopic market and our Australian and New Zealand renal market. The reason why we've separated the 2 is on the GI side, we are focusing on expanding out of Australia, which we're doing successfully. And on the renal market, I am only focusing on the Australia and New Zealand market because we have control over it, and it's very specific around territorial and jurisdictional registrations. On the market size for the GI, the key point here that I'd like to just take away is the gastrointestinal endoscopy market is valued at over 15 billion, and we're forecasting that to grow to 22 billion in 2029. The rest of the items that they're discussing and showcasing is around capital equipment. Yes, that can allow us access to it, and we can diversify to supply equipment. We do have a partnership as well with Pentax Medical, but our focus is more around the consumable and accessory space, so we can try and create value to our doctors, nurses, and our patients from an affordability perspective. The key growth drivers is around the prevalence of GI diseases and cancers. Whether we want to be aware of it or not, it is growing at a rapid rate. In Australia specifically, there is a lot of government screening programs that the state hospitals are pushing for, and the demand for minimal invasive procedures. Now, the reason why I focus on that point is because when you go for an endoscopy or any procedure in the hospital, apart from the wait time, the recovery time, and the procedure time, that takes a patient out of action and that particular ward and doctors for at least 2-3 days. If we can find minimal invasive where they do not need to go in for surgery, but have a more effective diagnostic tool, that means we can eliminate every patient going through the same screening and focus on your higher risk patients, thus reducing the burden on our state and private hospitals, which is a key focal point. On the renal market, dialysis services, dialysis consumables, and your nephrology are the three key line items. That's the market that we service, and those are the product suites where we fit into it. Unfortunately, we've got a rising case of kidney failure and kidney disease globally. Everyone is of the assumption that kidney disease or kidney failure is a direct link only to diabetes and sugar intake. That's actually not the case. The highest rate of kidney failure or getting diabetic is malnutrition. Hence, India and South Africa, or Africa as a whole, are the leading drivers of getting more patients onto the dialysis market. Now, the challenge around dialysis is access to affordable and innovative solutions. A lot of our patients are in rural areas, specifically in Australia as well. Majority of the patients are in, they refer to it as rural Australia or territorial. And a lot of our clients, such as Birchal and New South Wales Health, are struggling to get to them. Hence, there's been a focus point around home dialysis. But again, with having home dialysis, it comes at a very costly price. The existing OEMs that have been around for over 5 decades in the market come with their different pricing that makes it unsustainable for the Department of Health or Health Australia to actually focus on that. So we've been very strategic in our products where we actually go and target the specialist in the manufacturing of dialysis consumables, and we private label it, thus allowing us to come to market at a much reduced rate and allowing us to access the bit of a market size and take at least a 3 to 5% chunk out of it globally. In terms of our portfolio range is basically split into 4 key areas. It's accessories and consumables, breath testing solutions, hemostasis solutions, and renal consumables. Now, I know this might seem very out there in terms of terminology, but just bear with me and I will try and explain it in the most simplest forms. On hemostasis refers to bleeding. And when you go for a procedure, whether it's a gastroenterology procedure or an endoscopy, there's a 50% chance there's a bleed. And whenever a doctor conducts a procedure where they remove a polyp or a sample, 9 out of 10 times there's a bleed because it's a vessel. So what this particular solution does, it allows them to spray a powder that actually helps it coagulate and stop the bleeding immediately, and forcing the wound to heal much faster at a rapid rate. The existing solution is putting staples. Now, for a normal bleed the size of a 50-cent coin, you'll result in using 5 or 6 staples. And what those staples also cause is that it means you have to change your dietary requirements, and there's a higher risk of it also causing congestion through your colon or through your esophagus. So this product is manufactured out of China. The IP sits in the US, and we've seen growth in this particular solution to replace the incumbent at over 30% year-on-year growth for the past 3 years. Our largest users are in New South Wales. It's your New South Wales Health, and in Victoria, it's Victoria Health as well. A lot of the doctors are switching over to this solution because it's non-invasive. The recovery for the patient is more effective. And most importantly, it's 1/3 the price compared to what they're actually spending at the moment in terms of using clips or staples. In terms of breath testing, there's two types of solutions we focus on. The breath testing solution is a non-invasive way for doctors to diagnose patients with Helicobacter, which is basically peptic ulcers for us in layman's terms. We've seen a rapid growth over the past 3 years with peptic ulcers or H. pylori infections, and there's a 80% correlation of Helicobacter testing versus your peptic ulcer. The traditional ways, you have to go under, have a scope, they take a biopsy, send it to the lab for an answer, and then it comes back and then they start the treatment. This particular solution allows you to basically have a capsule, you breathe into a small breath card. Within 5 minutes, you know whether the patient is tested positive or negative. The accuracy is off the charts. We've seen a great adoption in Australia over the past 4 years, specifically with GIs that have consulting rooms, because they do not want to put every patient under general anesthetic, put them through the system of a procedure. Because apart from their massive costs associated and the burden on the hospital, it's time. And if 50% of the patients test negative, it was a scope that should have been avoided. On the gastrolyzer, it's a device that's been patented out of the UK, very popular globally. It focuses on helping us, again, do non-invasive diagnostics, where it helps us understand any patient that has methane, test breadth of methane and hydrogen breath testing that leads to other GI disorders, such as lactose intolerance, IBS, and SIBO. Again, the normal way is evasive scopes, thousands of dollars down later for us to figure out that the patient was negative. Whereas this particular solution, again, they drink a small solution, blow into the device, and your answer is immediate. So these two have been adopted quite positively by the market, and we're growing strength to strength, and we're averaging an adoption a month per site or per state, you could say, in Australia. And we've seen this creating less burden for the doctors when they're going into surgery. In terms of our consumables and accessories, I refer to these as our crockery or utensils. They are used in your day-to-day in every single scope, whether it's your upper GI or your lowers. And majority of them are used on a 1-to-1 ratio, meaning whenever there's a scope, you have to have a cleaning brush, you have to have a forceps. What we've done is we went directly to factories or manufacturers that specialize in these core products. They also manufacture for the larger competitors and OEMs globally, such as your Boston, your Cooks, etc. And we just tell them we want the exact same product, but the only key thing is do not basically label it. If you want to put a Vitramed label, we'd appreciate that. It allows us to bring the price points down by at least 50%, which has allowed us then to also target a lot of our day hospitals and state hospitals to come in with the same quality, but at a much lower price. And that's helping reduce the burdens of costs in our day hospital space. We've also noticed that in the day and private hospitals, there's been a rapid decrease of them actually been operating. There's been an increase of them closing their doors due to the burdens of costs, and they can't meet their day-to-day. So hence these solutions answer to that needs of theirs. On the renal consumables, we did the exact same application. We went to the global manufacturers that specialize in consumables, and we private labeled it. It allowed us to bring in the product much cheaper than anyone else in the Australian and New Zealand market. Hence our partnership with B. Braun, whereby it allows us to service their existing clients, their existing clinics, and partner with them on national tenders in Australia and in New Zealand. It's been thoroughly vetted. It is managed from a quality perspective, if not better than their existing incumbents as well, with regards to that. In terms of our channel partnerships and accelerating our market expansion, I did touch on this earlier. EBOS Healthcare was very strategic because they've been in the Australian market for over 2 decades. They've touched every single medical fraternity. They touch every single medical individual, and they supply a plethora of solutions, everything from the time you enter a hospital, which is your chair, your bed, your linen, to the widest range of pharmaceuticals. What they did not have access to was the GI and endo market space, but they saw a need for it. So we started the conversation about 2 years ago, and with success for the past 12 months, we ran a pilot, and it's proven phenomenal, where we've got a lot of clients that actually switched over from our competitors to us based on the fact that they gave us a chance. We built credibility by being with EBOS as well, and from a pricing perspective and quality. It helped us also, instead of us trying to scale our business to have more sales staff, we basically trained all their product managers in the relevant territories in the different states and enabled and empowered them to talk about product within the hospital and day hospital space. So we've seen a significant adoption. We didn't have much overlap between our customers and theirs because they were focusing on the customers that didn't purchase any GI from them, whereas that didn't fall into our space. So it's been with great success. Now we're launching nationally, and we are looking at tripling the current sales over the last 12 months for them. For B-Brawn, after the product approval, this allowed us now to focus on renal, very strategic. Instead of us going out directly to tender, we use B-Brawn as the primary customer into the market, and all of their customers are confirmed or patients. This allows us to be very specific and accurate in our forecasting. Reason being, every dialysis patient must have 12 sessions a month. So if they've got 1,000 patients, that's 12,000 sessions every month. So it enables us to have accurate ordering and stock holding for them specifically. So that's been great. And the emerging market, which is basically Southern Africa, shockingly, there have not been many incumbents that are challenging the status quo with the larger suppliers in the market, which is your Boston, your Cook, your Olympus. There's less than 2 that are Vitramed size, you could say your small to medium size. And we believe the issue is that the big guys just swallow them up or they just intimidate them. So what I've done over the past 12 months is we've got our products registered with the health authorities. We've identified key distributors in the relevant 10 countries that we've see and easy to access. We've had conversations with the health authorities, medical doctors, your key opinion leaders, and all of them have accepted the products. And we actually go live on the 1st of November with 10 hospitals in South Africa and at least 2 hospitals in the respective 10 countries as well. So we're looking at growing from strength to strength. The advantage of us doing this particular strategy with our distributor in Africa is that everything is paid up front, so it helps us positively from a cash flow perspective as well. In terms of the go-to-market, feeding off the previous slide, we've got a direct-to-customer, which is our existing customers that we've had over the past 10 to 15 years. We're currently servicing them. Then we've got the wholesale market, is whereby EBOS, being who they are, they have their own DCs in every single state. They purchase from us bulk, they store it, and then they deliver it directly to their clients. We don't engage with their clients at all. And then our third pillar is the export, where we want to focus on pushing proudly Australian products into the African markets, the total of Africa continent as possible. 54 countries, that's pretty easy for us to get through over the next 5 years, and New Zealand as well. So we realize that this will add more value and strength. From a direct-to-customer experience, we are in talks with EBOS to hand over those customers over the next 12 years. So then I can just focus the business on wholesale and export, which allows us to have an easier go-to-market and also much more less stressful in terms of managing the growth. In terms about the management team, so everyone in the team have been part of the healthcare fraternity, has robust experience in the GI and endoscopy market over the past 20 years. One of our directors is also a GI in Victoria. Sorry, he runs 5 separate day hospitals and clinics with great success, over 22 years experience, and is rated as the rock star of the GI community in Victoria. Our CEO, over 20 years experience in the ANZ territory in healthcare and distribution. Julie Simmons, she's been head of product. She's helps us with our go-to-market on new products, R&D, engaging with our key opinion leaders and marrying what the key opinion leaders want or like versus what the manufacturers can do. And we try and find the middle ground that we can deliver on it. Hitendra Patel, our financial controllers, got experience in India, Australia, New Zealand as well. And then for myself, I've been in the healthcare industry for over 20 years, experience operating in the US, Europe, Africa markets, and also Asia Pac, everything from go-to-market to product innovation and also product registrations. In terms of use of funds, I've identified only 4 key areas that we're going to be focusing on the funds. We want to increase and expand into Africa to support our distributor so we can penetrate the 10 additional markets through training, logistics, marketing, and wherever respective registrations that need to occur, if need be. I definitely want to focus on expanding our product suite. We only servicing right now 40% of the entire GI consumable space. I want to focus on some of the niche ones, non-evasive solutions as where the trends are being, and also look at OTCs, over-the-counter pharmaceuticals, and also heparin in the renal space, which is short supply, high demand globally. We're looking at diversifying offerings, so product bundling services in named models, and try and package them correctly. So it's having the right products, right partners to try and deliver that. And then optimize operations. With it growing at such a rapid rate, we need to look at optimizing from a technology perspective, also having the right people on the right seats with us in the respective jurisdictions, and just make sure we can capitalize on that. And that's it for me, Kirsten.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for the excellent presentation and the background on Vitramed. And super excited to get stuck into some questions. I noticed a couple of people did join during the presentation. Just for those who haven't met me, my name's Kirsten. I'm the CEO at Birchal. So I'll be facilitating the Q&A discussion today. If you do have questions on the Zoom window down at the bottom down here, you'll see a little box that says Q&A. So please just drop your questions into the Q&A box and I can facilitate them over the remainder of the session. But to kick off, Tilak, I wonder if you might be able to talk through how the team has come together. You've all got such impressive backgrounds, but how did you all come to be working together on Vitramed, and where did the original idea for the company come from?
So the original idea came from Julie Simmons. She started the business originally in 2008. Raj and myself acquired the business from her, but her passion was never to build and leave. She needed assistance to expand, and she never had the expertise offshore. Everything was locally. Her dad is one of the renowned GIs in Australia. He's unfortunately not well at the moment, so he's not partaking. He's basically on his last mile. It's quite sad. And Raj and I basically got global experience in terms of our background in Africa, Middle East, Asia. And Dr. Luke and I connected almost 2 years ago where he became a client. Same reason, he was exhausted of having minimum 40 to 50 procedures a day. Now, if you do the math, that means you're starting at 5 a.m., you're finishing 10 at night, and it's exhausting. So I positioned and discussed non-invasive solutions, which he was looking for, saying, does this technology exist? So when we spoke them and took them through our breath testing solutions, it halved and it helped him prioritize the patients that are required to go into surgery versus Tilak will go in, but I know I hope I'm good health, and you come out with negative tests, but he's wasted his anesthesiologist time, nurse, and surgery time. So we've seen great success from that. And then that's when he asked, hey guys, I'd love to partner. And I wanted a key opinion leader that can drive product with us, because I know business, I know finance, but in terms of actual GI specialty, I do not pretend as if I know that. I know I want to disrupt this space, but I need that education and support. And Dr. Luke is that guy. So what we're doing is now trying to figure out what's the next wave of where we can help our patients and fellow doctors, because a lot of the GIs, whether it's in the GI space or any other, they're suffering from burnout. When I do in-services at the hospitals, I can see the nurse, the clinical technician, the doctors, they're exhausted. And we're putting them under pressure by just pushing product without saying, hey, what do you need to help you sleep better at night? And what do you need to ease your workload? And
Yeah.
that's the plan. Yeah. So he's helping me a lot for Africa as well, Dr. Luke, because I told him Africa is not sophisticated, but they do the exact same surgeries. They have the same needs and requirements. So how do we make things simpler? And I said, other industries are doing it. So why not us? Why not healthcare? Everyone thinks dumb product, the name sells itself. And I'm like, it doesn't work that way. I mean, my incumbents and my competitors are charging the same product that we have 3-4 times. Just doesn't make sense. So we're quite excited on that. And Raj
Yeah.
is helping me with Asia, specifically India. And I was even joking and I said, but India is the next China. They manufacture everything. How do we compete? And he says the irony or the mindset is because it's made in India, they won't support it, but you can send it to Australia, brand it, manufactured by Vitramed, you send it back and they'll use it. It's the mindset because they're still going through that transition similar to China that you have your entry level quality and then you have your high level quality. From a pharmaceutical perspective, India is now in the top 5 when it comes to production. So even on medical devices, so Raj has a lot of access to hospitals in the smaller states, or what do they call them? Yeah, you could say states, suburbs, or districts. And the advantage is patient volumes are 10 times that of Australia. So if you get 20 hospitals, that's still 2,000 patients a month. It's on an unheard level. So it works to us. So we play to all our strengths because of our backgrounds. Dr. Luke, Australian, Raj, India, myself, African. So we try and say, we know there's a need there. How do we then plug that need in the most affordable, without compromising quality, and effective way to get the best patient outcome?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a very compelling proposition where you have benefits from a cost perspective, benefits in terms of patient outcomes of avoiding unnecessary surgeries, and then the kind of obviously the additional workload that removes for doctors in getting to avoid those surgeries as well. I'm interested in hearing a little bit more about the market, the choice of markets that you're looking at operating in. I know that as you sort of touched on then, each of you within the team have those different experiences that you bring together. But you have some footprint already in Australia, you're looking at moving into Africa. How are you deciding where the next market that makes sense for Vitramed's products are?
Great question. So for me, the reason why I chose Africa, it's underserviced. It's been monopolized by your tier one original equipment manufacturers out of Europe and US. And when Trump came into power, it was the best thing for Africa because they stopped relying on US aid. And now they had to figure out, wait a minute, our hospitals and our healthcare systems need to fund ourselves. Not that we got Big Brother giving us $300 million each year so we can do as we please. So that allowed me to focus on particular markets that I know are in great demand, meaning higher patient volume. The doctors have been receptive, have been requesting assistance across multiple areas. And thirdly, we know Boston, Cook, Olympus are primarily there. If they are there, I know for a fact their price points are ridiculous. So what I've been doing is because of my past life, I've got exposure and experience and engagements with a lot of the army generals who like head up the healthcare facility or your Department of Health. And we ask them, are you happy? And what are you looking for? And with the new tariffs coming in place, South Africa is still affected and Africa because a lot of the stuff is coming out of the US as well. And they said, guys, we don't have an extra 30-40% budget to carry any additional costs. So hence the last 6 to 8 months, It was rapid meetings, getting the products registered, ticking all the boxes, and in parallel, getting the doctors to test it hands-on, touch, feel. And they did a blind test and a champion challenge test, and it was fantastic. So what I'm doing is, or to answer your question more succinctly, it's around patient volume, where it's not being challenged, and most importantly, pricing. So if I see my competitors are the only ones in that market, I love it because I know it's about price.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And what are the regulatory and approval considerations operating a product like this across multiple jurisdictions with the multiple different kind of healthcare frameworks? And how are you and the team managing those processes?
That's another great question. So for Australia, we are TGA registered. In New Zealand, it's Health New Zealand, or they refer to it as WAND, WAND. Most of Africa work on reliance approvals. So as long as you've got CE mark, TGA, MHRA, or FDA, they allow you to have it locally registered. Some African countries don't even have registrations because this is a medical device. If we were pharmaceuticals, then they have you register for that specifically. So I have a framework of every single country, and that's part of the decisioning as well. If it's rigid and very difficult, but if the market is a sizable amount, like Nigeria, then I'd consider it. But whereas South Africa being the poster child for the rest of the continent, the rest of the countries of Southern Africa say if it's registered in South Africa, we accept it. Similarly to New Zealand, if you have a TGA registration, they will accept it without hesitation because they expecting the rigidness of the due diligence being conducted by that particular country. So South
Yeah,
Africa is
great.
still regarded as the gateway into the rest of Africa.
Yeah, great. And so you said I can see on the slide here, 10 markets initially, but I think you had another number in there, sort of more like 50 markets. Being able to
So
kind of
Africa,
rely on those higher level authorizations then gives you access to the smaller markets as well.
yeah, 54 countries in Africa. I've had the opportunity of working or being present in 50 of those, where we've set up labs or done training in the medical space. And Africa is not as what we assume it to be. They've got a lot of money, hence the big OEMs are playing there. I always joke when I speak to my fellow Australians, and I'm like, they're like, us, Africa, why would you go there? It's probably got financial constraints. And I'm like, guys, why would Olympus, Fuji, Boston, and Cook, all American and European companies, only operate there, nowhere else in the rest of the regions? I said because they pay in USD, so we've got a common currency across the board that they pay all the OEMs or your importers in US dollar, even South Africa.
Yeah, good to know. Have a question from the chat. So why are you using crowdsource funding as a form of capital for this raise? What
So
are the benefits you see from crowdsource funding compared to your other options?
So what I do like about Birchal, and I have exposure with your VCs and your private funders, is that you guys have a reach to hundreds and thousands of retail and sophisticated investors. VCs are only focused on me measuring per quarter, and they want to say, okay, how do we then have a sunset date in 12 months, 24 months, 36 months? Birchal, from a community perspective, is looking at the story. And I'm not generalizing all VCs, but it's hard to find the VC that matters about your why, opposed to, okay, what are the numbers only? And how do we make sure we only achieve those numbers or exceed those numbers? And because this is a proudly Australian business, I want to focus more on the community part and where we can go cross border with Australian products and Australian solutions and not be as rigid and priced heavy compared to all the other OEMs in the market.
Yeah, thank you. And if anyone else has questions, please do drop them into the Q&A. Otherwise, I'll keep asking questions while I wait for yours to trickle through. So the next one that I have is just around the product development approach. So I know you sort of talked through the background of how you came to some of these products, and obviously the geographic expansion is going to be a huge focus for you and the team over the next kind of 6 to 12 months at least, I'd imagine. But how do you approach developing new products and identifying new opportunities? And are there any interesting things on the product roadmap that you're working on?
Yes. So in terms of identifying, we look at existing products and enhancements. Those are the quick wins. So as an example, in the accessory space, this is a snare. Something simple is been around for over 35, 40 years. Same shape. But when we target certain jurisdictions, the patients are much larger or heavier. But when you take the polyp, which is basically a sample, that string connects around it. So what we do is we ask our doctors, do you like the existing one? What would you do if you needed it to improve to make your life faster, effective, quicker, etc.? And they'd say, guys, instead of a shield, I want it oval or circular. So we just speak to the OEMs to say, do you have something similar already in another jurisdiction? Are we allowed to test it? If not, can we then start the R&D phase? We start the normal documents in terms of design, test, improve, and so on. And we try and get it out within 6 months. We've been very fortunate with the current factories because we visited all of them in China, Europe, and in the UK. And we've got a good relationship that if I need to do some enhancements, they're very quick in trying to get me a prototype. And once the doctor says, hey, we're happy with iteration 5, we then do mass production. In terms of new development, a perfect example is around bread testing. And if we've seen there's a common trend of new GI diseases or disorders that's prevailing, but no one's testing it apart from the traditional way of scoping. I try, and Dr. Luke himself as well, and Julie, we look at any research that's been published from peers and doctors throughout the globe that talk about alternate means of what is possible. And then we speak with the respective manufacturers and OEMs to say, can we join this journey with you and be first to market? We know it's quite difficult to give us exclusivity globally, but at least I know I've cornered the ANZ market exclusively for whichever period. And for another region, they'll give us 12 to 24 months. But that's obviously much more lengthier, reason being of the regulatory approvals. So we make sure we fit into the regulatory framework, whether it's classified as pharmaceutical, evasive, non-evasive, and so on. So I love that side of things because it helps you stretch your brain and your muscle with regards to that. And we've had some great success. So we've even introduced first of its kind cold snare in Australia that has a 1-to-1 rotation. It might mean nothing to my audience, but for a doctor, what it means is if they turn, it turns immediately with no latency. Now, for a doctor, that's saving them minutes per procedure. And that's an eternity, especially if you got a bleed, because if a patient's bleeding for more than 20 seconds, they are in trouble because that means they can't serrate the vessel's gone larger, and it's now a pure perforation.
Yeah, super interesting. So you've actually kind of almost got these two parts of the business. One is sort of new product development, looking for new innovations designed to
Yeah.
sort of improve patient outcomes, and but that one sort of has the benefit of exclusivity and being first to market, but the kind of the detriment that it might take a little bit longer to work through those approvals versus the other side of the business, which is more about looking at opportunities to create a 10x or more improvement in the functionality or reduction in the price of the existing sort of set of tools that doctors are using today. So it's interesting to see those two sort of elements, come into play here and how you're thinking about the different elements of the strategy. One of the questions that I have that often does get asked in these webinars is around competition. And I guess particularly when you are looking at, what is the kind of global footprint of some of these larger competitors? How can you come in and sort of undercut on price in the sort of more accessory side of the business? What are the barriers that present someone that protect against someone else coming in and sort of deploying this same strategy? What are the strengths that Vitramed has that will protect against other competitors trying to play this game as well?
Very good question. So to be fair, if an OEM that is being born doesn't exist here, probably is from Europe. If they've got a massive bank balance, they can try and gain market entry. Few issues and challenges is TGA protects us in terms of product registrations. So just registering all your products at the first go is going to cost you an arm and maybe 2 legs. Then you've got our existing competitors, which is your Boston, your Cooks, your Olympuses. They do not like competition. So where we got away with it was we were under the radar and we didn't focus on the state or public hospitals. I focused on the day and private hospitals because collectively they've got more bargaining power than all of the state hospitals. Secondly, for me, doesn't mean you're on tender that if you're the procurement, you're going to purchase from me. You need to see me every day, every week. And that for me is very exhausting for a state hospital because you've got a plethora of service providers and you're going to get annoyed with me. So the day and private hospitals have been underserviced, and that allowed us to grow rapidly to a point where our OEMs, such as the Bostons and Cooks of the world, are wait a minute, where did these guys come from? So if a new entrant has to come in, the key thing is going to be around what else can you offer? Because breath testing now has been incorporated as part of our bundle. So when my other competitors come in and they try to displace us, they say, hey, we'll give you the same pricing. The hospitals ask, but it's not only about pricing. How frequently is your in-service? Do you have hemostasis solutions? They give them a list of saying, do you tick all these boxes opposed to just price? Because price shouldn't be the primary and end all factor. In some instances, yes, but can you now complement the rest of the solutions? Do you have non-invasive solutions? Do you have your non-bleeder solutions? And that helps us. So hence, back to your point of innovation, we want to find unique stuff that might not be there or has been there, but it's just never been improved on over the last 20 years. And I always joke about our consumables and accessories. And I say, guys, that's like the tire or the wheel. When the wheel was invented, we didn't reinvent it. We just made it faster. So that's what I want to do. There's enough capability there. And you see the doctors switching over because they're like, wait a minute, if it saves me 5 minutes, I do 40 procedures. That all adds up. That's an extra 2, 3 hours a day that I can now actually do my notes.
Yeah, great point. I wonder just on that sort of note, oftentimes when you're a founder and you're busy building a business day to day, it's you lose track of all of the little wins along the way, because you're so focused on the bigger goal. But I wonder if you can share with the investors on the call, what are some of the milestones or the moments in Vitramed's history that have just made you feel super proud about what you and the team have delivered? Like, what are those moments where you sort of get home at the end of the day and you think, yeah, we're building something that matters?
I think for me, it's been around our hemostasis solutions. Reason being that milestone, it was laughed at when we started that product in the market. The incumbents product has been around, but we had a lot of cases where the doctors and nurses that were in surgery said, your product saved a patient. Small touch wins like that. Secondly, it's also evident we in the New South Wales tender, we've been awarded that tender every 2 years for the last 7. So it's just been renewed because of the quality of service and care that the hospitals tell New South Wales Health. Uh, Amazing service delivery from our side, pricing, but the key point that's come out is around quality. And I think the two critical ones over the last 12 months prove that we're not just a SME, is the alliance and partnership with eBoss Healthcare and B Braun, because those are giants in our industry. And for them to say, hey, we want to partner with you on these products and tell us how to go to market was amazing. And when we go to their offices and we have our monthly and quarterly meetings and part of their conferences as well, you like sit back and say, whoa, you didn't realize now you in, and I say this with love, in the big boys field.
Mhm. Yeah, awesome. In the healthcare space as well, there's some really amazing things, isn't it? Like when you hear
Oh,
those impact on doctors and patients. It's
every day you learn something new, you see something fantastic. And I love doing the in-service myself, at least 5 a month, so I can keep abreast of what's happening at the doctors. And when you hear a practice manager saying, guys, y'all saved a 70-year-old from going into an invasive procedure, he tested negative and they were pushing to go for a scope. And they only found out afterwards he's got a lung condition. So if he was under anesthetic, could have had complications. So those small wins we hear every day, and I'm like, we always here trying to figure out ways, because no one hears about the pain this industry goes through, especially patients. And your heart goes out when you're sitting in a consulting room and you see all the patients then, and majority are over the age of 60. And I sit back and I'm like, oh damn, I'm gonna be there soon. So I got 20, I got a couple years to set up some non-invasive stuff because I myself don't like to go under. So I
Yeah.
can't imagine everyone else being told, well, you have to. And a lot of our patients go repeated, huh? If they go in and the biopsy tests inconclusive, they go back under within 4 weeks. So
Wow.
it takes a toll on the body as you get older.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we've probably got time for one more question. So, given you're on this slide, I was going to come back to this anyway. But you talked earlier about the revenue generated over the last 3 years, $4 million written on here, but also the really impressive growth that has contributed to that sort of revenue number. Can you talk a little bit more about the revenue growth? What's been driving it to, over the last 3 years? And what are some of the wins that have come out of that revenue growth story?
So key points has been instead of focusing over 100 SKUs, I basically brought it to a group of focused products that are high volume, high impactful for the nurse and doctor and the clinicians. And from a margin perspective, there was no point trying to sell 1 million brushes, which is a loss leader, if I'm not getting that complemented by something that's giving me a 70% margin. So I reevaluated the business in the last 3 years to focus on products that I know are going to make a dent in the doctor or nurse's life. But at the same time, it's high frequency. So 1-to-1 ratio or a 1-to-2 ratio, meaning for every scope, they use at least 3 products. I want to be 2 or 1 of those. And we made sure we then also negotiated with our OEMs to say, guys, we're willing to do this and part this journey, but if I'm doing margin rationalization, I need you to also help us on that. And that's what helped us carry it. It grew volume on certain clients. And then I basically cross-subsidized with our other clients, which were a normal margin. I also focused on key champion clients. So in this industry, you always have at least 3 or 4 clients that everyone knows if you are doing business with them, it makes sense that I have to do business with you. Otherwise, it's FOMO. And for me, in New South Wales, it's Liverpool Hospital. Everyone knows them. They're the largest in the state. It took us a year to tick off their own regulatory framework over and above TGA, New South Wales Health, because that's who they are. And I loved it because you took every doctor through the journey and they understood the story, and it wasn't just a product, it was a solution. Because I keep reminding them, a product is where it's Coke, you drink it, you move on. What we're trying to do is enable you to effectively manage your patient during surgery. If there's a hiccup, you've got something that stops the bleed, but a 2-hour procedure is now 1 hour, which means you can put more patients during your docket time, or 2, you have more time for yourself to research, investigate what else is out there. And thirdly, it was our eBoss Healthcare, where we then focused on clients that I didn't have and they didn't have on the GI side. And we held their hand during the pilot phase. So it was very focused. We tracked it daily and weekly. We never let anything creep up to us on that. And we managed margin exceptionally well.
Excellent answer. And what a way to finish. Thank you so much for Tilak for taking the time to take us through this today. I've really enjoyed this discussion, and in particular, I think the way you have been able to communicate with us all sort of the big picture strategy of what you and the team are trying to achieve, but also the really kind of tactical day-to-day ways in which the product works, the regulatory approvals work, and the impact that this has on patients and health professionals. So thank you all as well to our investors for joining this afternoon's question and answer webinar. So as I mentioned at the start, a recording of this video will be sent around to everyone who has registered for the webinar in case you know of anyone who missed out, or for those of you that missed the start of the session. The expression of interest campaign for Vitramed is still live for another week. So if you haven't already, jump onto the Birchal platform, check out the information that's available on there, and submit your expression of interest. So the early access offer campaign for Vitramed will open next Tuesday on the 30th of September. So make sure you have your expression of interest in before them so that you can have first access to the offer once it goes live. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us today, and have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday.
Thank you. Cheers,
Thank you.
Kirsten.
Bye.
Bye-bye.